Water utilities are under pressure from every direction, but three pain points rise above the rest. Today on RPI Tech Connect, two veterans break down what they are, what it costs to ignore them, and how to solve them. This is RPI Tech Connect, and I'm your host, Chris Airy. Longtime listeners might remember an episode from years ago where we talked about the state of water utilities. Today, we're going a bit deeper on what that space looks like and some of the challenges that organizations in that space are facing. Joining me are two guests who have spent a lot of time in the water utilities space. So returning to the show, we have Mr. Bob Benstead from Infor Strategy Group. And making his very first appearance is Mark Oliver of VIP, where he leads the Infor Practice. Bob, Mark, it's fantastic to have you both on the program today.
Thank you.
Happy to be back.
Awesome. Before we jump in, where are y'all calling in from today?
Ironically, we're both from Northern California, so we have a lot to say about this water industry and the challenges of water and all that stuff.
Yep. Very cool. California, I spent some time living out there. I do miss it, but I definitely can understand, or I guess you're uniquely positioned to talk about the water utility space today. So I can't wait to hear about it.
Yep. Water is politics here in California.
Actually, we're both just outside of Sacramento. So
nice. All right. So before we get down into our big three challenges facing water utilities in 2026, I want to get a pulse of what this industry is like today. So, Bob, we can start with you. Give me your read on the industry.
Sure. There's no shortage of crazy issues. There's certainly a lot of topics to address. It's often very regional, but I think a couple of the big ones real quickly are the water availability. We in the West obviously have been challenged for years. But you're finding a lot of news things coming up. For instance, the pending El Nino or Super El Nino. And what does that mean for California? And it boils down to even such as small or Southern California or Northern California or the southern tier of the United States. So there's a lot of things happening around the availability. An ongoing one that is certainly not going away anytime soon. That's the infrastructure and the state they're in and the capital available to even, to deal with that. But there's two new ones that I'll just briefly mention. We can probably talk about them later. One is the influence of AI. It's a brand new world. It is crazy right now. It's the Wild West, but there's potentially some enormous benefits done right. And then one that seems to be accelerating is, in support of AI, data centers and the impact on water and stuff. And I've had very interesting conversations, very interesting examples, and what that's doing to impact water availability and costs and all that type of stuff.
I'm really happy that you brought up the data center thing, because that's a topic that I see everywhere all the time. And heading into our conversation today, I didn't even think of that. So I can't wait to hear more about that talking point when we get to it. Mark, same question for you. What's the lay of the land right now?
So I just kind of want to play a little bit up on that data center, because a lot in the news and stuff is you hear about the electricity that the data centers are using and how that's affecting. But what you don't hear so much is the cooling that needs to be done, right? And that's where the water part comes in, because most of them are using, if not all of them, water to drive the cooling of them. And so that's where we come in. The other thing that I'm seeing, just because I'm coming from the perspective of a group that implements a lot of software, is that a lot of the water industry is coming up to a point in their infrastructure, their software infrastructure, to where it's just getting old and definitely cannot handle the AI components. Looking at some of the issues, just the integration issues that they're having between their financials and their billing and their all the different components that they're trying to manage, because everything is just getting more complex and you're needing your data to be much more accessible across different systems and to be able to analyze. And that's what I'm seeing is just a lot of requests for proposals out going, hey, we need to modernize.
When you mention the infrastructure there, is that a physical thing for like carrying water to communities, or is that a hardware thing like
It's
computers, or
more of a
both?
hardware thing. I mean, that Bob's going to get into the infrastructure because it's both, right? But from my standpoint, I'm seeing more of the hardware thing, and that's where I'm seeing a lot going. We can't handle all this infrastructure on premise anymore,
Mm.
and that's why a lot of these requests are coming. Going, what do you have in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
What can we leverage in the cloud?
I look forward to talking about the cloud because I feel like that's going to be the solution or a possible solution to a lot of these challenges today. But with that, let's get into this first identified challenge here, which is water availability. Bob, tell me about it.
Yeah, so often, and this is probably in most regions of the world, United States, North America, there is a very big competition, if you will, about who gets the water. We mentioned we're from California, so we have an agricultural interest, we have a environmental interest, we have a consumer city interest. So there's all kinds of competing piece, and there's so much water to go around. And what we're finding is there's a lot of system water, meaning the water, where do they get it from? How much is available? We're susceptible to droughts in the West. We're now talking about susceptibility to flooding and all that kind of stuff. But then when you get down to once it's in system, you also have water availability and how much do you lose? How much is non-revenue water? How much is, you know, loss or theft and all that type of stuff. So when you have that, you have water loss sometimes within a system. So it's both gross in nature and local level in system level. So there's a lot of things influence the availability of water, and various geo regions have better access, others don't.
Mhm.
Mark, same question for
Yeah,
you. Water availability.
I think Bob hit on a really key point here in that we can't really help what the availability is. I mean, the snowpack is going to be the snowpack. The aquifer levels are the aquifer levels, right? But we can start to analyze and figure out where these losses are coming from. Are they coming from evaporation out of canals, right? If so, what can be happen there? Is there leaks in pipes? Is there people, for lack of a better word, siphoning off, right? Stealing the water. And that's where then the software starts coming in and how can we better analyze what systems are in place to be able to measure throughput, the flow, et cetera. So you can start to identify, oh, well, it's not just we're losing, this many thousand gallons. Where are we losing it? And once you know where, then you can start to manage that.
That's a really good point you make there about like the conditions are the conditions. Some of these things you can't change, but like if you're losing water, being able to measure and identify where that water is being lost is a really key part of helping, I guess, manage what's available and what you can use. So next
It's
part of
no
that
different
question
than cash
is,
flow, right? Where's my cash flow going? Oh, I'm going to Starbucks four times a week. That's where it's going.
so what is the overall like level of maturity then? And like are water utilities like from your perspective good about measuring these things? Or are they kind of like lost and throw their hands up? Like how far along are they?
Well, I will say that they're getting much, much better. There's all kinds of programs specifically to identify leaks. It depends on what part of the world in many cases, and to some
Mhm.
degree what part of the United States, but they're actually putting a lot of effort in it. A lot of it is system loss. So where am I losing water? Are there leaks in the system? Is there loss due to theft? That type of stuff. But then you get into the other part, and that's the actual revenue and the billing of the water and how much of that's being captured. Is there, you know, uh, unreasonable loss of water that's not being billed? It's being delivered, but perhaps not being billed. So it's kind of a
Mhm.
connection of all those types of things.
Right.
And is there a platform out there that kind of like captures all of that in one place where you can see billing and leakage and whatnot?
There is. We take kind of a universal approach where we do all of the utility billing and all of the asset management and all of the regulatory piece in one. But there's tools that are even beyond that. An example is mapping capabilities with GIS, and there's very specific leak detection capabilities and things like that are designed specifically for that. The interesting part is what are they doing now with things like IT, where they can span all these types of things and utilize these multiple tools and what have you. Um, but a lot of I will say a lot of the lost trends when it comes down to measurement, when you're billing and you have capacity and you're expecting revenue to that to fund future growth, repairs, rehab, things like that, it becomes very important to kind of connect the billing and the asset management because they often go hand in hand. How are my meters doing? How's my system delivering? That type of thing.
And this is one of the promises of the cloud, yeah, like being able to see all this in one place, interconnected
Absolutely.
in a single platform.
I'm gonna take it one step further in that yes, it's really important to be able to have that utility billing aspect and the asset management, right? Because you need to be able to see everything from your input, where's the water coming from, into your treatment plants, in your water mains, service lines, water meters, all the way into the homes or commercial or into your farms. But it's also then being able to see that on the financials side as well. To be able to have a platform where you can look across the entire operation, not just from the operational side, right? The boots on the ground, the pipes in the ground, that kind of stuff, but also the financial impact and the analyzation over in your financials and be able to see, okay, what revenue streams are being impacted? How much is it taking to repair or maintain certain areas versus what it might cost to replace those kinds of things. So it's the entire platform of the utility billing, the asset management, those operational assets, and the financials. So, and you could even, if you want to throw in the HR piece as far as your employees and how much time are they spending on this. And I mean, you need to be able to look across the entire operations.
Yeah, really good point. Thanks for.
Platform does, and the platform really something at that level and looking across that much really does take the cloud. And I mean, I know we're not here to advertise, but I think that that's where Infor really shines.
Awesome. And I'd love to hear more about the Infor platform and how it can help address these challenges. But I do want to move on to this next one here, which is the infrastructure component, which we kind of touched on earlier. But Bob, I do want to raise a point that you mentioned last time you were on. And that was the American Society of Civil Engineers report card gave, I think, the infrastructure United States water a C minus. That was 2 years ago. I'm not sure if you know what the new grade is or if we've improved since then or what the status is.
Well, it's good, bad, or otherwise along the same lines. We have massive underfunded and massive needs. And, it's one of those kind where there just simply isn't the money to go around. You can only raise rates so much. There's all kinds of factors in there. But at the end of the day, I think the best place to start is you have to understand what you need and actually know the condition of the infrastructure you're dealing with. How good are my pipes? How good are my treatment plants? Do I have enough, all the components that are needed to actually look at that? And so we take an approach that you need to know and have condition assessments of what your infrastructure is, and then start looking at things to try to mitigate that based on ROI. And once you get ROI established, meaning, okay, these are the top 10 things I can do based on this amount of money for this amount of time frame, then you can start going into, okay, what happens if I choose this? So you have to move it through the process of financials. And where am I getting the money? Are there grants available? What's the prioritization from the financial piece? And do all of that type of thing. And then you have to have the crazy component, what is going to further my cause and help with EPA mandates, for instance, and stuff. And then once it goes in, it can follow into project management and funding and drop back down into the asset management system to actually go pick the best thing you can possibly do based on real data, real goals, real funding, that type of thing.
Uh, Question about prioritization. So it sounds like a difficult thing to kind of like navigate. Do you have any like recommendations on how these utility organizations should approach that?
Yeah, that can be all over the things. I've seen some in, for instance, Australia, where they only used four factors. Is it in the central business district? Is it near a stream, or is it near, some other type of sensitive area? So there's various things you can put into, but it depends on the data. You don't have to do major data collection, but a lot of people track various things. What is my revenue? What is my age? What is the soil type? Various things where you can utilize in a decision matrix those things. And then you can run these scenarios against each other. So long story short is you can actually pick what it is. You don't have to have huge volumes of data or huge new data collection efforts. A lot of folks have what they need to start making that prioritization based on what's important to them or available.
Got it. That makes sense. So, you mentioned something earlier about infrastructure and like being able to detect where leaks are. So in my mind, that sounds like a two-part equation. You need to have physical like sensors or something in pipes to measure where the leak is, and then that's feeding the software. How does that work?
Well, there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of systems out there now with telemetry and, all kinds of feeds coming in, pressure zones and things. And there's actually solutions built specifically to see where my losses are. What zone am I having? Am I losing water there? But then the second piece, so you have the physical capability of seeing where and what's happening. But you have the other part that is the revenue loss and the loss of water from your billing system. So that too can augment detection areas. What's happening? Why am I not getting the water there? Am I losing revenue because of X? Those types of things. So it's actually kind of a full circle. But at the end of the day, most people have criteria to at least start running those, analytics to see where is it I'm losing, what's my biggest risk, things like that.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot about the capability of the platform Infor Cloud helping with these various areas within water utilities. Compare that to the on-prem solutions they're dealing with now and trying to get away from. Is it just like light years apart? Like, do they not have no visibility into any of these things? Is it really like that?
It's not so much that they have no visibility, right? They can. But without a real platform that connects everything together, they are relying on their own IT or hiring outside IT folks to do all those integrations and all that custom. Everything's custom. And anytime they want to make a change, anytime they start thinking, well, maybe I can do that kind of analyzing with this data, then, well, you got to redo the integrations and things. Where when you start getting into a platform, all that stuff is native, right? So it's more of a configuration of what do you want to do, what do you want to see, what data you want to pull. I mean, I can literally, if they say, well, I want to start analyzing this data, I can go in after hours, make a change of what data is being downloaded into, this what we call a data lake or data warehouse type of thing, and the next day we can be analyzing it. So it's not this tremendous effort and tremendous cost because everything's already piped. Not to have a pun there, but it's already piped, right? to work together. So. I also did want to kind of comment here is that when we start talking about analyzing data, the first thing a lot of people will say nowadays is, oh, hey, AI can do that. Yeah, eventually. But AI has to have quality data behind it, right, to make those decisions. So Bob was saying, that a lot of people have that, but it's still kind of sifting through and not uploading noise, right? Because noise makes it very difficult for AI to do a job.
I'm glad you bring up the AI element again, because I have to ask, what are your thoughts on not to get political, but the data center is obviously having an impact on water availability for the
And
cooling
here,
purposes
let's
that you
do more with
mentioned.
AI. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like,
I get it.
is that being
Bob, you want
measured? Like, how are these?
Well, it is a hot political potato, to be very honest with you. There are places, Arizona, Wyoming, you can, every day you seem like you see an article. A lot of the trend is not in my backyard type attitudes, to be honest with you. Some of it valid, some of it not. But the fact remains that that's an explosive area. It's a common theme regardless of where you're at. How's it going to impact the water capabilities? How much is it going to utilize? Are they following compliance stuff? All that. Same applies for energy. So it's very real. You can go and look up any kind of article and you'll see some rather heated conversations going on in society about that very thing.
I feel like the introduction of the data centers is a huge reason why, or motivator for these water utility organizations to move to the cloud so they can measure the kind of impact that it's having. Like, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, interesting enough, it's the very hosting of AI capabilities in many cases for all those huge transaction capabilities that's going to eventually solve it. That's one of the ones that you have the potential of using the AI
Wow.
that relies on these data centers to actually resolve the long-term solutions and what have you.
Yeah.
It's full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is indeed.
I look at
Mark,
this.
go ahead.
I look at the data center issue as an engineer, because I'm actually classically trained as a mechanical engineer, so that's how I think. So, I'm not looking at it from a political standpoint. I'm looking, going, okay, this is the direction the entire world is heading. Okay? This is the biggest next technological evolution that we're going to have. So it's not like you can say, not in my backyard, and you're just not going to, right? Because it's coming, right? The
Yeah.
train is coming down the tracks. So now it becomes an engineering problem. Where do we put them? How do we cool them? How do we provide electricity? That sort of thing. And so, again, from an engineering standpoint, do you start building them offshore and using ocean water to cool? Do you put them in
Oh,
where on and on and on and on? But it becomes an engineering problem where I would rather the politicians stay out of it and let the technology companies come up with a solution, because they will.
dang. That's a fascinating argument. I appreciate that. Um, I want to move now. So we talked about one motivator for moving to the cloud. We have data centers. Let's talk about compliance. Everybody's favorite topic is compliance. So, is there anything out there that's kind of like, making this move more imminent or like, yeah, Bob, what can you share?
Yeah, yeah. So we have various levels of it. And this is actually an example of the United States. You can look at the same thing in Canada. Australia is a very good case of multiple layers of enforcement and regulatory components. But in the United States, the big probably influencer and policy setter and what have you on a macro level is the EPA. They have very strict guidelines. And it's about more than just water quality. A lot of it is around water use. A lot of it is around contaminants, all kinds of stuff. So you have the federal piece, but then you drop down and you have a lot of things in the state. Mark and I live in California. A lot of regulatory issues that are specific to California. And then you break down into regional. Is it on the coast versus mountains? All those types of things. So you have multiple tiers, which makes it very difficult for many water authorities to make sure they have their priorities right. How do you comply with EPA when there might be a local one that's maybe a little bit different? So you have to actually make sure that you start with an understanding of how that cascades down and affects your operations. And it does affect, all the things in an infrastructure piece. It has things to do with billing. It has things to even do with regulatory piece such as land management. How can I use it? Am I allowed to do this? That type of stuff. So it's a very complicated piece, but absolutely necessary. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of places that if they don't follow that, they will be under what's called a consent decree, and someone else will take over operations and what have you. So there's a lot at risk in that, and you have to really make sure you have a complete picture of what you're managing, how it's being regulated, and how that affects your operations, and how the systems such as we provide can help manage that piece.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about compliance, you said the EPA federal level, and there's state, regional, local, all these different levels down of things that need to be accounted for to make sure that people are in compliance with. Is that something that the Infor platform, can track and manage and show very quickly, if you're in or out of compliance? Is it that simple, or what is the mechanics for managing that?
It's a little bit more than that. So there's another aspect to compliance, which is from a security standpoint of the data you're collecting and the data that you're. So there's the whole security aspect and compliance from that standpoint, which with everything in the direction that things are moving with hackers and the tools that they're using, being on-prem is extremely difficult to start meeting those security compliance regulations. And that's where when you go to a platform in the cloud, then it is Infor's responsibility to manage all that, along with AWS, et cetera. So you're buying that compliance as well. Now, as far as the compliance that Bob was talking about, the platform then allows you, yes, to visually see it, but it also allows you to more easily and quickly produce the reports that are required to go to EPA and to et cetera, et cetera. So, it's both sides.
I'm really glad that you brought up that other part, the security part of this equation, because it's so true. It's something we talk about a lot here at RPI, is that when you do make the move from on-prem to the cloud, you have that reassurance that security and updates are happening behind the scenes. You don't have to dedicate resources and time to do that. You can trust that it's happening behind the scenes. So it's really good addition there. Thank you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear now. We're gonna revisit AI because it's a tech podcast and it's all the rage. And in the water utility segment too, it's just super fascinating. So we know the role that water utilities play in powering AI, but I want to hear from y'all's perspective. Do you think that AI can play a role here in managing and analyzing and budgeting? Can water utilities benefit from this tool?
Yep, absolutely. There are a lot of cases out there. If you can decipher some of your big problem areas and what have you, as long as you have access to the good data, Mark talked about this earlier, you have to have good data to rely on and pull forward and what have you. But assuming you do and you go through that process, what happens is you have this wonderful capability to do things, say for the infrastructure, utilizing predictive maintenance or process orientation and simplification, all those types of things. But if you move that out into other areas, you can start using AI to address rate structures and optimization of rate structures and affordability. You can do it for long-term infrastructure planning. There's all kinds of things, and even down to, as we call it, some of the great data mining and data optimization capabilities, workflow, in other words, and taking that and go, okay, where are my anomalies? Where are my bottlenecks? All that type of stuff. In even permitting type things, so you have a workflow of some sort. Well, there's a lot of places in there, a lot of complexity at times. And so being able to take that and in a very powerful, capability of saying, oh man, you're a bottleneck here and it's costing you this much revenue. It's things like that where AI has, it's almost like a new frontier, the art of the possible, obviously, but there are parameters you have to have in place, governance models, what kind of data is it and what's being used, what's allowable, things like that.
And there's AI like capability. I know we've talked about it like from the Velocity Suite perspective, but the Infor platform has a lot of AI natively within the cloud solution that can help with this kind of analysis and report building and whatnot. Right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. The agentic wave is coming. We're working with our client base and partners and everything to define some of those, pre-built cases and being able to utilize those. And that will span everything from asset management to billing into regulatory issues and things like that. It truly is going to be the art of the possible. But you also have to realize you have to have the support mechanisms and the governance to make sure it falls within the data being used and the capabilities and, all those types of things, security and whatnot.
Hmm. Mark, anything you want to add from your side?
Yes, definitely. Because I think there's really two sides to the AI story when you're talking about software systems for water utilities. One is what Bob had talked about, which is the AI tools that the agency will be able to use on a day-to-day, month-to-month sort of basis. But there's also the AI tools that are important when we're implementing an entire system. Okay.
Mm.
So this is where it comes in. And most people go, oh, well, AI is just going to start, you'll eliminate jobs and a little bit. No, especially not in the software implementation phase. What happens is it makes us more effective. So our business analysts, when we're coming in and interviewing you, it's taking the notes, it's writing up the requirements, doing all, but it allows us then to truly listen to you. What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis? What is it you're trying to get across? What are your intentions, right? So it's really helping us. It becomes a tool for us to implement the software and the platform in a way that makes your job so much easier. It makes it more intuitive, right? Because we're able to take the time now to really listen to you and make it yours versus we've got this contract, we've got to get the requirements, that kind of thing. So that's what we're using the AI for. And again, it's another tool in our toolbox to help us.
I really like that you added that second element here to the AI use case situation here. The implementation component is huge. It's something that we do here at RPI too. And it's what's really interesting to me as a host of the show is that I've got guests who work in different industries. And I recently had a neurologist on the platform who was talking about AI helping him get more face time with patients by using I can't remember the name of the tool, but basically it allowed to take notes during the session with the patient, so that, like, as opposed to being in front of the computer and taking notes and like not even like engaging with the person in the room, it freed him up to really listen and to understand their pain points and deliver better care. So like I like that because that same like capability in healthcare is showing up in water utilities during the implementation phase. So really great point there, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's how the platform is implemented. Yeah, the platform's got tremendous capability, but it can be in a way that users hate it or become super smooth and they love it.
So true. It's only as good as the way it's implemented and the organization's ability to use it thereafter. All right, gentlemen, we're getting close to time. And before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests if they have one actionable takeaway for today's audience, what it would be. So, Bob, big moment. What do you have?
This will vary from region to region and entity to entity, to be honest with you, but have a prioritization of those things you want to address. There's not enough money to do everything. There's often resource constraints, but have an idea what it is, and then make sure you have the data and the systems to accommodate that. That doesn't mean having to put in 20 systems, try to find stuff. Obviously, I'm making a pitch for ours where you have the bulk of the components there, but know the data you're going to use and make sure that it's accurate, valid, all those types of things, because that will support not only your operational piece, but it supports all kinds of, intelligence and reporting, and it will eventually support AI. You have to have the right data and make sure you control that piece to have that in there. So prioritization and the data to support it.
Really good. I like that because it feels like an incremental, manageable first step. If you haven't made the move to the cloud yet, This is a good place to start. Really good, Bob. Mark, what do you have?
And I'm going to take it that if you are thinking about needing to replace your system, you got to look at not only the platform. I'm obviously biased toward what platform, but it's not only looking at the platform, it's looking at the people who are going to implement it, right? Can you work with them? Do they jive? Is it going to be an us versus them kind of implementation, or is it going to be a one team working collaboratively to get you a solution that's going to work for you? So that's what I would recommend.
ERP projects are supposed to be a we project, right?
Yes.
Really good note to end on there. Thank you both so much. This has been a lot of fun. I learned a lot and definitely have a different perspective on the water industry now. For those of you listening in, if you have any questions about today's segment or you want to learn more about Infor's cloud solution or VIP or how RPI can help you, we want to have a conversation. Please contact us at podcast@rpic.com. Again, that's podcast@rpic.com. This has been RPI Tech Connect. We will see you next time. Thanks so much.